That's a beautiful comment that you just made. For example, I was giving you an example about Virginia Satir. That's actually something she used to do as she was working with family systems, kind of observing all the different things that happened and describing them, especially in the case when she noticed that there might have been two levels of communication. Like somebody would say, no, I'm not angry. I'm really not angry at all, really. So obviously there are two levels that you can observe. A lot of the times people are not aware that they have a change in voice tone. So what she would lovingly do is share, I'm noticing that quality in your voice tone, and I'm noticing those gestures. I'm curious, are you aware of that? Have you noticed that yourself? So she would lovingly just describe that and bring it back, and then see and raise awareness. And if people, for instance, would respond to her like, I wasn't aware of that, she would let it go. Like not insisting of, okay, this is really what happened, but just kind of raise awareness around that. So that's a beautiful example.
I'm a headhunter.
Yes.
And when I go and try and win new work from a new client, it's interesting that the client's body language and tone of voice is different if I meet them in their office, in a more formal setting, to whether I take them for lunch or a coffee.
Yes.
And they seem to be a bit more relaxed, less guarded, and their tone of voice and body language is quite different. Also, when I'm interviewing a candidate, for example, I invite them in to our office. It's a lot more of a formal setting, and they come across much different. So body language, voice again. Whereas if you go and meet in an informal setting in a coffee shop, again there seems to be in a different type of mood, mindset, which is quite interesting.
So setting, what I'm hearing you say is that different settings, like a formal setting, might show a different body posture, voice tone, and different language maybe. And then another setting might be more casual and shift in state. What you're talking about is state.
Yeah, because often a candidate will open up much quicker if they're in a more formal setting, because they're in a different state. And it's much easier to then find out about.
Okay. So when you come back to calibration, how would your calibration skills help you in
because
with
I think
that?
calibration, I think, when we're doing the exercise with the music, so kind of the kind of happy music at the end, almost calibrated them to be quite happy and they were laughing and stuff. And then if you then take that on and start maybe, and if you're trying to coach them into something, they're in a different state of mind to where they would have been if you played them some very, very serious music in a different mindset, in a different state. So I think you can calibrate people depending on, say, setting or music or whatever it might be.
Right. Okay.
Hi, Liz. I'm a GP, and we've got this thing in general practice called the patient's hidden agenda.
Right.
So the patient may come to you with something like they've got a cough, and you just think, oh, it's a cold, go away. But actually they're worried about something. They're worried they've got cancer because maybe somebody in their family is diagnosed with cancer. And when we sit our membership exams, we have to kind of watch ourselves doing consultations and being able to pick up on clues in the consultation that the patient may actually be worried about something else. Because if you just say, oh, it's a virus, go away, but actually you've missed the fact they're worried about cancer and you haven't actually specifically explained to them why it's not, then actually you've failed the consultation because that person leaves unhappy and probably will come back the next day to see someone else or because they're still worried. So when I started doing NLP or came to the course, I was amazed at how much of our consultation skills are based on sort of NLP as well. So for my job, it's kind of invaluable being able to pick up on clues that people might be giving me. Okay,
so for example, if you see a clue like, is there anything else, and they say something like, no.
Sometimes they come in.
I'm over exaggerating, but sometimes we do those things like, no, it's fine. So we do that. If I see a nod, it tells me, okay, there's on an unconscious level, there's something else, and they might not be aware of it and not being able to notice, to voice that. And you could like, I'm noticing, I wonder, is there more to it? And you could pull that out. Yeah. I think in coaching, which is one of the things that I do a lot in businesses. Calibration skill is really that tool that is most important, because as you keep pointing out, I'm really thankful for that, is we're trying to move away from judgments. We're trying to move away from too much meaning giving to something, because it comes from my mindset, it comes from my experience, from my history. And so there's a lot of things that will come from me and putting onto my client. It's my experience. So we're trying to really find a space where we can describe and observe things and have a really good understanding and tools to be able to do that. So that's what calibration is really good about. And understanding this is maybe a state of, I'm feeling a little bit sad about this. And here's a state, oh, I have confidence and this feels really nice. And if we know those different states, then we can help our clients to move from this state to this state. And this is usually why they come. They don't want to be here. They want to be here.
This is a question, because when you're calibrating something, how do you get over the cultural differences? Because in different cultures, eye contact, for example, might not be held. Or like you nodded yes, but I think in some cultures, actually, yes is something else. So how do you allow for that?
That's a great question. I think that when we talk about calibration, it's the calibration of that specific person in a moment in time. And then it's their culture, background. So we notice the difference of that particular person that we talk together. So if you're saying there are differences in cultures, then you take into account all the knowledge, like all the presuppositions and all the knowledge you have about different cultures, that we're trying to start from a 0 point. So this person is my culture, this is my world in this moment in time. So I'm calibrating the differences I notice with this unit over here, for example, Bilal. So that would be my culture. I don't know if does that answer the question?
So you have to actually do some research, presumably, to know that.
Well, research in the moment in time. I don't think you need the research of the cultural background. Trying to strip away all the knowledge, all the filters of knowledge that we have, but really being with that person in a moment in time and noticing what's available there. So really staying with the observations. I think that's what we're trying to do. And which is hard to do because we have a lot of information, right? We have a lot of learning, so we're taking all these learnings on board and hopefully, and we want to use that learning. So I think when we start with NLP and calibration skills, it is a little bit of an invitation. Take away all your learning for now, knowing it's there, it's available, it's all the experience that you have made, and you can take that on board anytime you like. But for now, just be with that person as if you're discovering this world for the very first time and you don't know anything, but you're very curious to find out about this world, about this culture, about this unit, and about this particular state in this moment, and another state in another moment. So it starts from ground zero. That's what we're trying to do. And that's a difficult thing to do, to strip away all of our experiences and learning and just put them to the side and just like, okay, I want to find out about you. I don't know you at all. I don't have any presuppositions about you. I don't have any filters about you. I want to learn. Teach me who you are. Tell me, teach me who you are. That's what we're trying to get.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I think that for me is the most powerful thing that I've taken away from this, is that you work with an individual. And because I'm foreign here,
Yes.
I can see how people look at an individual and they take everything they know, for instance, about black people, and they judge you based on their assumptions. And actually, the opposite is true of other cultures that come here, and they have this thing, the English are like this. And actually, people people are individuals and they're very different, and it's really working with the individual and understanding where they've come from and what their experience has been. And I think for me that's the great thing I've taken away from this.
Yeah, I guess that's really what we're trying to motivate you, what we're trying to inspire you to be really excited and to have a fresh look, have a really fresh look at somebody, and as if you have not observed the human species before, like this is your first time. Yes.
Just digesting what you're saying about taking a person to take the primer and put it outside the window and look at the person at this moment. I find that I can't separate it moment, because I'm thinking when I see students, I do work with people from all backgrounds, that when we're sort of observing and understanding them, part of that is also understanding their culture that comes with it. And whilst we don't tag, but sometimes it's important to acknowledge that, and sometimes they seek comfort in that as well, that you understand. So I find it hard in my mind now to think this separates it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sometimes that really helps
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
How can we...
Absolutely. I mean, what you're pointing out, I think, is a way of rapport, of pacing, of understanding where people are coming from, which is building a way of connection, of feeling safe and feeling connected. And that's comforting, and that's important, and that's a great skill to have. And I guess as there's this important saying of we cannot not communicate, there's also saying we cannot not interpret. That's coming with us as humans. We do interpret all the time. So that will continue. So that's a skill you have, and you're not losing any skills. We're just adding some other ideas, some other filters, and just creating awareness around, look at somebody really fresh, in addition to all the other skills that you already have available. So for me, it's not an either or, it's a both and sometimes much more beyond that, even more interesting. And that's kind of the encouragement. Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. Thank you very much. Yes?
Do you think as humans that we can actually do that? Because everyone has unconscious bias and so forth, and you can never be subjective about anything, really.
Objective?
Sorry, objective about anything.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think, I mean, how far do you think you can get? I mean, when you go and meet a client, do you think you're completely objective?
I don't think so. I think we're humans, and in human forms we come with everything that we have learned. And what I believe, though, is that we can fine-tune our calibration and observation skills. And so that, with all the perceptions that we have and all taken into account, that we cannot not interpret, that we do that all the time, that we cannot not tend to label, because we try to organize things. We seek for stability. And so labeling things, interpret things, gives stability. That's just a human condition. And in addition to that, I think we can fine-tune our observation skills and our curiosity to that. And we can probably fine-tune an attitude of whatever my first impression is, I'm curious to find out more about that.
So
Put it on pause.
So you're kind of saying, find out about someone and make your mind up afterwards, rather than what most people do. You make your mind up before you even met someone, or the minute you've met someone, you decide what you think they're going to be like, and then...
Yeah, absolutely. Just be curious about what else is there available, what information can I gather, and even take in more information to observe and just enrich my own map. It's all about enriching our own maps and broadening them and get excited about all the new informations. Yes. I would like, before we get into too much talking, I think I would like to add one more calibration exercise. And then I would like to offer a little summary roadmap that I talked about before. Is there any volunteer? Anybody who would like to? Because I would like to add one of the exercises with a little bit of a different twist to it, just to add the calibration. Can I have a subject for that? Okay, come on up. What's your name again?
Lewis.
Lewis?
Lewis.
Oh, Lewis. Okay, thank you. I put an A to it.
Lewis.
A Lewis. A Lewis. So for me, you're A Lewis now. Thank you, A Lewis. Lewis. Well, thanks for coming up, and thanks for all your awesome questions. And they make me think. That's always really great. Do you remember the first exercise with the calibration that we did?
The
Think-
music stuff.
The one before that?
Oh, yeah, you mean in the positions?
That was the museum.
Oh, the county one, yeah.
Okay,
Good memory.
right. So
Wrote it down.
what I want to ask you to do is also to think about a person that you dislike. And I want to invite you to see what you see and calibrate in all different areas. Just notice what you can see. And maybe pick a person when you have a scale from 0 to 10, and 0 is like very low, and 10 is like dislike, dislike, dislike. Doesn't have to be a 10, could be maybe like a 7.5 or 8, but you know, pretty noticeable on the scale. Do you have a person?
I've got that.
Great. Okay. And you have a chance to see him, to observe. Okay, just notice. All right. So I would like to invite you to shake off, and we can do the wiggly. Do it, do it. We can do it, do it, do it. We can do it. Do it. Okay. Okay. So when you got neutral, again, I would like to invite you to sense a person, have it in your mind that you have a positive relationship. From 0 to 10, doesn't have to be like a very, doesn't have to be a 10. Can be a 7.5 to 8, but in a positive relationship.
Okay, I've got someone.
It has to be somebody you specific know, so we know the gender and age and all those things. Okay, and you just take in all the information that you can gather and observe. And maybe you want to take some notes. Okay. All right. You can shake that off. Do it, do it, do it. You can do it, do it, do it. You can do it. Okay, all right. So now take a third person, and that's neutral. Like if you have your scale from it would be on a medium.
Okay. I've got someone.
Not great, not terrible, something so-so, doesn't hurt. But just an interesting space. So what is the neutral? Did you pick someone?
Yeah, I've got someone.
Great.
I've been thinking about it for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting to observe when you search for which one to pick. All right. And you take in all the information, observe. All right. Okay, so shake that off. Come to a neutral space, so we start at 0. So what I would like to ask you now is to ask Lewis, not A Lewis, but Lewis, or A Lewis, to ask him questions that make him think about one specific person, so that he has to pick. It could be a question that he has to answer with a yes or no, but you're not saying it, you're just picking your person, right? So it could be which one of the persons do you know the longest? So then he has to pick one. Or he could answer with yes or no. So it has to be a question that would select one of the three.
And I don't answer, I just...
You don't answer, you just think of the person.
Okay.
Which person are you most attracted to? Got one.
Question?
Who do you have the closest relationship with? Which person?
That's an interesting question. Close does not necessarily mean.
Yeah, I was going to say, who do you feel is the smartest? Didn't like that question.
Interesting.
What was the question, please? I didn't know.
Which person do you think is the smartest?
Who's the shortest?
Which person has had the greatest influence on your life?
Tough question. I actually haven't decided yet, by the way.
Which of the three people is the oldest?
Can you see the search process? Interesting.
Going back to the question, which person has greatest influence on you? Which of the two people would most agree with you? Your answer.
Hold on. Just want to point out, can you notice that some of the questions do take a search process? So it's nice to have those different distinctions so that you can observe their searching until, okay, now I found the person. And then the expression. So search, we invite people to go into an inner search process. So, yes.
Which of the three people do you see regularly?
And then the longer we go, it's interesting to play with it, right? Yeah. Okay, one last question. Is that okay?
Which person do you trust the most?
Okay. Okay, let's stop here for now, just to ask you, what was from the exercise something that you became aware of that was interesting for you? That
The
you
longer
noticed.
you stand up there, the more you fidget.
Okay.
So you're not quite sure what to do with your hands and your body language. But it's quite interesting thinking about the people I thought about, and then when you ask me the questions, you then think about each person, and then it's quite interesting. But then also you feel that you have to, because everyone's looking at your facial expressions and your body language, you then start to feel that you should have some type of different reaction every time a question's asked, which affects what you do. Yeah.
So it's the internal that you notice, but also the awareness. Oh, I'm
But there's
hoping to be a good subject
there's
here.
there's the people that you're thinking about, and then there's the expectation of everyone looking at you, and then internally feeling like there should be some type of reaction from you.
Interesting. It's an additional element that comes into play when you're a subject, right? Can I be a nice client to demonstrate nicely the differences that make differences in those, with those different people? It's an interesting additional element. I guess did you pick information app that would give you a clue about what he just said?
Yeah, because you've got quite a smiley face. It seemed like sometimes you were smiling in the pausing bit, so when you're thinking, you're searching for stuff, and so in between those moments when you've decided in your head and then you're waiting for us to work it out that you've done it and the next question come along, you're there kind of projecting upwards.
What specifically could you observe as he was, as you were saying, in the searching mode, as he was searching? What did you pick up? Eyes moving in different directions.
He was speaking sometimes. It felt like he was speaking.
It looked like he was speaking. What did you see? What did you see him doing?
His lips as if
Oh, moving his lips.
he was talking.
Yeah, like having a little internal conversation.
The third person that you thought of, you did that most with the moving of the lips. Third person.
Quite clearly fancy one.
I wasn't sure if it was when you weren't sure about something, you shifted your weight, almost like you were searching.
So
So you internally, and you were just because you were thinking, you're so thinking about it, you weren't aware of what you're doing. I wasn't sure if you were doing that because you were thinking or because you were at the front. So.
I don't want to go too fast, too early, but what we actually do is every information that we have is stored in a space. So if we think about people, they have a specific space in our own little internal world, in our universe. So one person could maybe be more here, another person could be here, or maybe I'm representing somebody in the back, which is sometimes interesting. I come back to you what you said with the gestures. Sometimes we can actually use a hand in order to show a space. Oh, this was happening here, and it's my internal representation of this is where I'm experiencing this. So this movement could actually be a cue of, oh, this is where I represent that person. Every information is stored in a location. And so this is what you show. Yeah. Were you aware of that too? Did you notice something?
I'm aware that when I'm trying to think, you end up looking around, trying to recall the information. Yeah.
So great observation.
Not closing your eyes completely. So there's like a little flutter, but didn't go all the way. So I'm not sure if that's when you're processing.
Yeah.
Judgment from that.
It's actually a cue for an internal, kind of a trancey state. Like we're going into, like it's because you're asking questions that allow him to internally search, which is a trance kind of state. That we use in coaching, for instance, a lot. Searching questions to answer that. So for all the coaches or becoming coaches, timing and giving space for those search process is crucial, is really important. How to allow that. That was really nice to see here. Okay, great. So I would like to, thank you so much. Thanks. I would like to invite you to do a little exploration for yourself, a little exercise in a team. And it's up to you. You choose if you want to stick with one person that you really like and one person you dislike, and then ask those questions. And please specifically note who you identified so that you can later exchange if you had the right information to pick is this person or this person. We didn't specifically do that in this exercise, so that you have a feedback. Oh, I did calibrate right. Just to have that information too. The other option I give you is do it the same way we did it. So you have one neutral, one that you specifically like, and one that you dislike, so that you also have a neutral space. Because if you add that, it's a slighter difference, and it asks a little bit more of your calibration details. So it's actually an interesting space to add to the variety. So let's say it's a 10, it's a 0, and it's the 5. And the 5 is really interesting, because sometimes we are in states that are not necessarily really, really good or really, really bad, but they're kind of in between. So it's interesting to fine-tune our senses to those spaces too. So find, for this exercise, maybe get together in a group of 4. If you like, you can, A will do the different states, and B, C, and D, you guys can talk about if you want to focus on a specific area you want to observe. Is there anything specific you want to focus on, so that you chunk it into different areas? Or you just observe everything and then talk about it. So take 10 minutes for that exercise. I encourage you to do 1 round. If you have enough time, do a second one. So take the time. And also take your time to debrief and talk about it and evaluate, so that you can gather more information for that. So be back in 10, and then I give you the model, and then go from there. An interesting experience, an interesting exploration. It's it seems very similar to the very first exercise we did, and it has a little bit additional twist, and just to focus on that. There is a lot more to do with calibration. There are a lot more interesting exercises, but we can only cover as many, and hopefully motivate and inspire you to just continue to be curious about observing and gathering information as much in detail as possible before you open a box, put a person in the box, and close the door. That's a great skill to have. I'm just curious, how was your success rate, quote unquote, in terms of finding the different people with your observation skills? Was it really high? Yeah? For some people, high? Okay, congratulations.
I found it hard to differentiate between negative and, or not negative, or the person who didn't like it and the person that they weren't so fussed about. So
You mean the neutral?
Yeah, so
And
positive was a lot easier.
positive was easier?
Than negative or neutral.
Right. So there.
So it's like kind of merging in.
Okay. I was hoping for that, to have some difficulties, and there are just really slight differences. That's interesting.
I think it was about 50-60% right, but I think I was when he was thinking of the different people in terms of thinking of the answer to the question, he was thinking through the different people, and when I noticed some of the things, i.e. person 1 or person 2, and that would be my answer. But the problem I was finding, I think, was I was naturally assuming what the answer to the question would be, looking for those signals, and because he was thinking all 3 to think of the answer, I was noticing only the signals that were my conclusion that I come to before.
Yeah, isn't that interesting now? We have those pre-filters. We put the pre-filters on somebody else, and then we take everything as evidence. Oh, yeah, on the checklist. And then sometimes that didn't really fit.
No, it was like the songs when you had the 3 songs.
Right.
And then you had the one
Great.
that was played again, but I was only noticing
Yes.
whichever song it was the first time that they called it.
Great. And giving that exploration, what is it that you're learning out of that? What is it? What is it that you're taking from that?
Try not to build a conclusion before you see, you look at everything on a blank scale.
Awesome.
And then try and build a conclusion.
Awesome.
Rather than the other way around.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. So it gives me the goosebumps, actually, because it's not about the high percentage rate of, oh, I was right on, but it's, I'm much more interested in the quote-unquote failure quote, so that there's space for growth and learning, you know, and that's really exciting to know, oh, wow, I can develop my learning skills. I can grow from here. That's why you're here, right? Not here because you know everything. You're here to learn and grow, and so that's exciting.
I kind of realised that so when I asked both of them actually who they liked, and they start smiling all a bit and stuff, and then you ask certain questions, and I mean there's so many different smiles, but because they smiled at the start, my initial thought was, oh, this is the person they like, rather than noticing other bits of their breathing or body language or whatever. Or slight variation in their lips when they smile. So that's quite interesting.
So awesome, yeah.
We had
Patricia.
difficulty with the second person. The first one was easy to sort of to calibrate. And
Right.
the second one was actually very difficult.
Right, yeah.
Because we needed to notice the micro movements rather than
Yes.
bigger movements. And we actually got a lot of it wrong.
Yeah. And that's great to know, right? Some people show a lot of information and it's easy to get them, and some people show little information.
I thought I was more writing an open book, and I was thinking, no, this is so obvious. The large movement was me just crossing my legs, which they associated with something, and that was just me just moving, just wanted to move, not because of any other reason.
So you're saying that you catch yourself being pretty obvious with your cues?
I personally thought I was being quite obvious.
Oh, okay.
Well, I might at least try and make it difficult, but
turn out to be different. Turn out to be different. Well, I know personally for myself that I have a tend to give away a lot of information, and I first thought, oh God, what a drag! I don't have a poker face. Everybody can read in my face like an open book, but actually that encouraged me to communicate more congruent and have that as a guiding line for myself. If I have an expressive face, if I have an expressive body language, that gives me encouragement to communicate as congruent as possible, to share what am I feeling in a moment in time, and to really, bring that in our communication, because it's there anyways, and my body teaches me, it shows. So how about my language to train and take the risk to show all of me that I bring in a moment in time.
You admire them for different things.
Right.
There was a conflict in that. It was difficult because there were very differing signals that were being given out, and sometimes they were conflicting with the person that they were actually thinking about. So I found that quite difficult, whereas if it was just a straightforward question, it was a lot easier to
So what's the learning you take from that?
Well, yeah, don't place any judgments on things as well.
Great. Awesome.
It's strange, because I almost got a bit of performance anxiety. The more I tried to work out what was going on, the more I put my own filters on there. The more I was likely to get it wrong.
Yeah.
It's almost something I don't kind of seems to generalise until the
Yeah. You're not a virgin anymore, right? It's like now you have information and then it goes into the,
So the more I step back from it, the more I try to kind of be open-minded about it, just not make any judgments as easy as it was.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
Thinking, it's sort of related. Is there an element of that we're doing the exercise and how you're standing in front of the person who's performing? Because just earlier we were talking, and we've had two challenging clients who had very small muscle changes between the three people. But then I noticed earlier when we were talking, she did a big smile as we were talking and acknowledging him. And that smile was bigger than when she was standing there thinking of the person that she really liked. So there's an element of the setting at that time. I know we're not meant to interpret, but just looking at what I see, so there's a bit of that as well. The fact that she was standing there doing the exercise, and then here was sitting.
It's unnatural, so it must then.
More your natural space, yeah, definitely makes a difference. Okay, I don't want to keep you too long from your lunch break, but there's one little piece I would like to cover just to summarize what we've done in terms of calibration, to give you that roadmap that I promised to give you, and then I think it's time for you to continue to socialize and talk about, or calibrate, continue to calibrate, or whatever you feel like doing in the break. Okay, since we're talking about lunchtime, it's time to talk about a bagel. And bagel is one of my favorite models that Robert Dills developed, and I guess it's because it was a new breakfast I got introduced to in the United States, bagel and cream cheese. But that's why I drew this little donut bagel thing. But as, I don't know if you know this quote from Magritte, like, do you know the paintings of Magritte where he says, ce n'est pas une pipe, ce n'est pas une pomme. So he draws an apple and then it says, ce n'est pas une pomme. This is not an apple. So this is not a bagel and it is a bagel, so to speak. It's an acronym. So it stands, it's a bagel, is the word put together from those capital letters. B is standing for body language. So one area that you can easily pick up is the body language of yourself, like when you are in a specific situation, because we also want to create greater awareness around your self-calibration skills as much as calibrating others. So when you see somebody else, maybe that's a potential client or somebody that you want to hire or negotiate, when one of the areas you can focus on and observe is the body posture. The shoulders kind of slouched to the front, to the back. Is somebody leaning sideways? Are they standing on both feet at the same time? And the shoulders kind of lean back. All those different things you can notice. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but this, for instance, and the more practice you have, the more things you will be able to pick up and the pieces of the puzzle put together. But this, for instance, is sometimes giving you a clue about somebody is ambivalent. On one hand, on the other hand, we tend to do those things. Say, oh, on the one hand, I would like to go to the movies with my friend. On the other hand, I'm feeling really tired, but I really like my friend, and she really wants to see this movie. I'm really feeling tired. You know, we do those things. So that is showing with my body posture, one side, other side. So you can bring all these different things together, and it shows this whole body unit and giving you a lot of information. Because the body is expressing a state I'm in. And through my body posture, like what you did, remember what you did in the museum? Putting yourself in a stance, it's like, oh, I'm confused. That's a whole body posture when you say, oh, I'm confused. And it's not just a body posture, but it's also adding a gesture. I'm putting my hand to my head, maybe if I demonstrate that, which is the G. G is an area talking about gestures, hand gestures. Come back to that. Yes. Just because I mentioned that, I thought I'd jump and then I come back. So this is gestures, and they can be close to your body. They can be far away. You know, this is what I do with my hand while I'm talking. So that could be something interesting to pick up. What kind of gestures do I make? Some cultural gestures that we know. Mm-hmm.
Is gesture more likely to be conscious and versus subconscious, or not necessarily so?
Both body posture can be conscious and unconscious, and the same goes with gestures too. Doesn't have to be. Yeah, both. It all has both levels, conscious and unconscious. What we can do though is, let's say I'm noticing my client, let's say I have a client who is facing a difficult situation, and I'm noticing there's a glimpse of when they do a certain gesture, it's shifting the state into a more wanted state. I could observe that gesture and pick it up and create greater awareness to my client. Say, well, I'm noticing as you were shifting your state, you moved your gesture like that. I wonder if you just, repeat that movement. How is that changing your state? Does that do anything into a direction that's more wanted? So you could create awareness for your client to that. And, just add the gesture and repeat the movement. Something like that. So that the unconscious become conscious. So body language is one, body posture, body language. A is accessing cues. Accessing cues is a really interesting area. That can be breathing, which is, by the way, in coaching, one of the most interesting areas, to notice shift in breathing. And probably one of the really great things that we learned from Erickson and also Satir working a lot with breathing. Erickson was actually putting himself in the same state as his clients and picking up the breathing. And that's probably one of the deepest ways of creating a deep connection with your client. Sharing a breathing space. How did he pick up on that? Because he was tone deaf. He couldn't hear musicality. And he had a situation where he heard this terrible noise. And so it made him curious as he was a teenager, I think. And so what happened was he went to a church and heard these people making this terrible noise because he was tone deaf. He couldn't figure out. It hurt him in his ear terribly. What he observed, though, was that people were smiling and the energy was high and really positive and nice, and people were singing together. And then he noticed, oh, wow, it's uplifting because they're breathing together. Because when you sing together, you share the same breathing. So that's what he could observe. He couldn't hear it. He didn't like to hear what he heard, but he observed the breathing. So that's like a beautiful accessing cue. Another accessing cue is micro movements, like a little flicker of the finger, something I do, like a lot of unconscious little movements, micro movements that I do. And they repeat in a certain situation. That's an accessing cue. What are others that you remember? Yeah.
Other than the eyes, for example?
Those are the coming. Yeah, I say that for the E. Any other accessing cues that you noticed on this journey so far?
Rub your nose.
That would be like a unconscious micro movement, micro gesture. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. So different face colors. Everybody's changing colors, and that has nothing to do with pigments. You can have a white color, you can have a red color, you can have a yellow. I believe you can have a green, red, white, or gray. Green. Did I mention yellow? Okay, so everybody can change face colors, and that has nothing to do with pigments. So we all have those changes. That's an accessing cue too. Mm-hmm. When I get sweaty, that's one too. Breathing is a big cue. Just to cover some of the most important ones. I don't want to overload you with too much information. So G, we covered its gestures. E is an interesting one, which is eye accessing cues, and I guess that's something you will do more in detail later. Okay. I guess one that we can point out at this point is when you have the eyes moving upward. This is visual. If your eyes going to the lateral, to the sides, it's auditory. Looking down is feelings or interpretations of feelings. So it's two ways of feelings. So down, internal feeling. Here is auditory. That's why you saw them as they had the headphones doing this sometimes. Did you hear that? Or you had a little conversation and you were doing your eye movements on the lateral here. So that's a cue of I'm having a conversation. I'm hearing my conversation with somebody else. And this up is visual. So just as a quick finder for now, and you get more details. Promised. Excuse me? Down is, summarize it for now, is about feelings, internal world feelings. It's an area of feelings and feelings about feelings. So it's also internal dialogue, but that's a connection to feelings too. But you get to that more details.
Is that to do with the source? For example, you're looking up because the optical visual cortex is slightly behind brain, and you're looking sideways, looking to the auditory cortex and looking towards the ear, and looking down towards the heart.
I'm assuming, I don't know. I mean, I'm not that familiar with all the details in terms of brain, but I'm assuming that that's the link to that you're accessing the information from those areas of the brain, because there's a roadmap for if you're right-handed, but if you're left-handed, it's the other way around. So that would probably translate. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming. But I don't want to say yes, and I don't know exactly, because I don't.
It's an easy way to remember, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Looking towards the ear, you look up towards your side, look down towards your heart. Is that feeling? It's an easy cue.
Mm-hmm. Could definitely be true. I don't know, but that's a good point. L is for language pattern, and you will go into depth about that too. Oh, here accessing cues, tonality, if your voice is different. Higher pitch, lower pitch, different tempo, different rhythms. And the interesting thing is they're all linked together. So a certain body language comes with a certain voice tone and comes with certain eye accessing cues and different gestures. And so they're all connected and linked together. And so it's interesting to maybe start, what is it, the information that I easily pick up? What's obvious to me? And start with that to maybe get more details about it, and maybe add some other areas that you want to focus on in detail when you continue to observe and fine-tune your calibration skills. And then there will be a time when you have practiced this more and more in depth, where you all of a sudden notice they're all easily linked together. There are language patterns that connect to body postures and gestures and all that, and then it becomes this whole unit. This is just to chunk it down and to make it easy for the beginning. It helped me a lot, because at the beginning I thought, oh my God, too much information. I don't really know where to focus on. So I highly encourage you to focus on some areas, and once you feel comfortable with that, add more, so that you can chunk down your learnings. And it will enrich over time and create a larger map, and you feel more and more comfortable about it. And it's exciting to broaden the map and to orient to the new land of a new person. All right. Giving you the bagel model, I hope you feel hungry now and that we can move on to a nice lunch break. Thanks so much for your patience and your time, and see you later.
Thank you. 2:30, guys.